Okay. Okay. Good evening. My name is Monica Elliott, and I'm co-president, along with Margie Roback, of the League of Women Voters here in Broward County. And the very first thing I want to do is just take a moment of silence for what is happening in Israel and the Gaza Strip. This is just so devastating to see that on the news. So if we could just take a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. So I think most everybody here is familiar with the League. So I won't go into it too much, just that to say that the League of Women Voters, is a nonpartisan organization, and that we never support or oppose any political party or candidate for office at any level of government. Now for tonight, I want to provide just a little bit of background. So SB 525 was passed by the 2022 legislature. This is the bill which created the Office of Election Crimes and Security, what we call the election police. And then it also renamed the drop boxes to secure ballot intake stations. One of the more obscure portions of the bill prohibits the use of ranked choice voting in any election in the state and preempts any conflicting local ordinances. And it is ranked choice voting, which is our topic for tonight's meeting. Our presenter is Vilia Johnson, who is with our sister organization in Sarasota County. She is a year-round Sarasota resident and community activist who grew up in Tampa and holds BA degrees in speech communications and political science from the University of South Florida. After working in major cities across the country, she has returned to enjoy retirement on the Gulf Coast. Oh, I meant to ask you, do you sail or are you a power boater?
I'm a sailor. I'm a luffing lassie. I'm in a ladies racing club.
Okay, I thought I saw that, yes, because I sail too. So anyway, good, back to the point here. She has worked in corporate management, has a corporate management background, as well as entrepreneurial experience, including stints as AVP sales at L'Oreal, national sales manager for Cross, and president of her own manufacturer's rep agency in the Northwest. She previously served on boards of several industry organizations, as well as the King County YWCA in Seattle. She currently serves on the board of the League of Women Voters of Sarasota County, where she is vice president, and then also team leader for advocacy. She also serves on the board and leads the Speakers Bureau for Rank My Vote Florida. Vilia, I'll let you take over, and you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about ranked choice voting. I know that many people do not have their screen on, but I would appreciate it if you could use your reaction buttons and just give me a wave if you're already familiar with ranked choice voting. I just kind of wonder if people are familiar with it or not. No? Okay, I see one. Okay, so most people are not, and that is very common. That's one of the things that we find in Florida. Even though ranked choice voting has a lot of momentum nationally, people in Florida don't know about it very much. So that's our mission, is to try to educate people about it. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And start the slideshow. How am I looking, Monica? Oh, she's muted, but it sounds like I'm okay. All right. So, all right, let's proceed. Voting is a top priority and part of the core mission of the League. So what kind of reforms and improvements do we strive for? Let's take a moment to imagine voting in an ideal election. What might that look like? There would be a large and diverse field of candidates to choose from. Candidates with similar views compete without concern about splitting the vote. Candidates would be civil to each other, and if they share similar views, they might even campaign together. Just imagine, they would focus on issues rather than attacking each other. They reach out, appealing to more voters than rather just their own narrow base of support. You can select the candidate who truly represents your views without fear of wasting your vote, because your vote will always count. Winners are chosen by consensus rather than by appealing to extremes, and have the approval and support of the majority of voters. Well, in light of recent contentious elections, this may sound like happy talk. But ranked choice voting is a simple change that can help align our electoral process with the public interest and result in outcomes like those just described. More civil, inclusive, and more representative elections. At the 2020 National Conference, League of Women Voters US established the recommended standards for electoral systems shown here. These standards support systems that empower voter choice and more inclusive and representative elections. Ranked choice voting meets these standards and fulfills the recommendations of LWV US for equitable and effective representation, as well as support for alternative electoral methods in state and local levels. Tonight, I'll cover some of the problems commonly caused by our current plurality system, where with the candidate with the most votes wins, even if they do not have a majority. I'll explain how ranked choice voting allows voters to rank candidates in order of preference rather than having to choose just one. We'll see how it works and how it diminishes many of the problems stemming from plurality voting, bringing us to the ideal of the US standards. And then we'll have time for questions and discussion. I'm sure we're all too familiar with some of the problems that are created or intensified by our current plurality system. Our choices may be limited because some candidates refrain from running out of fear of not making the top two or of being a spoiler candidate. Many votes are wasted, leaving voters feeling unrepresented and with less incentive to participate. You'll remember that in 2020, over 3 million votes were cast in Democratic presidential primaries before some candidates withdrew from the race. In Florida, this included almost 15% of the total votes. In 2016, more than 600,000 Republican presidential primary voters experienced the same loss of voting power. All those voters cared enough to be sure that their votes were cast early, yet their vote was wasted because presidential candidates withdrew before Election Day. In plurality elections, the candidate with the most votes wins. That works when there's only 2 candidates, but most races now field numerous candidates. In a crowded race, winners may be the choice of as little as 25% of the electorate, which equates to not being the choice of 75% of voters. Consider the results of Florida's 19th congressional district primary shown here. The winner received 23% of the vote. We have no way of knowing from this election if he had broad support. Research indicates that members entering Congress with less than 35% support are significantly more ideologically extreme and significantly less representative of the district than those who enter with majority support. In other words, the mechanics of how we vote can foster extremism. All these issues can be addressed with a simple change to our electoral system that makes a big impact. Ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting, is a nonpartisan reform that gives voters the option to rank any number of candidates in order of preference. If a candidate receives more than 50% of the vote, they win. However, if no one wins by more than 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and those ballots are redistributed to the voter's second choice. The votes are retabulated. I'm sorry. The instant runoffs continue until someone has at least 50% of the vote. Here's an example ballot. With plurality voting, you can only select one candidate, but with ranked choice voting, you can rank your preferences. My first choice is Althea Sharp. Even though I know she doesn't have much of a chance, I can vote for her without feeling that I'm wasting my vote. My second choice is Phil, who is likely to be the top vote getter. I'm okay with Phil or Valerie and can rank them without hurting Althea's chances. I don't care for George at all, so no ranking for him. If no one wins by more than 50%, the candidate with the least amount of votes is eliminated. So if Althea is eliminated, my vote goes to Phil, and I'm fine with that. I was able to vote my true preferences and know that I did not hurt Althea's chances. So the voting process is pretty simple to understand, but how are the ballots calculated? Here's a range of candidates on the political spectrum. We begin by counting only the voters' first choices and check for a majority winner. Bright orange is the first choice of the majority of voters, so she wins in round one. But what if there's not a majority winner in the first round, as is so often the case these days? Here, no one received more than 50% in the first round. So we eliminate the gold candidate who only had 5% of the vote and redistribute those votes to the other candidates. So now orange has 44%, purple has 36%, and light purple has 20%. Once again, no one has more than 50%. What happens next? We eliminate light purple, and the 20% of the votes given to her will go to the voter's next choice. And the winner is dark purple with 55% of the vote. The current system would have elected bright orange in the first round. However, it's clear that more voters preferred a purple candidate. So typically the first round winner does prevail. However, it does open the field to a broader range of candidates and creates a more civil atmosphere for the election. It does also result in true majority preference. So, okay, I skipped one there, didn't I? Okay, now you're going to try ranked choice voting, and I'm going to say something that you never hear in a presentation, and that is, please get out your cell phone and open up your camera app. And if you scan the QR code that's on your screen, a website that'll pop up, and you can just tap on that, and it will take you to rcv123.org. And we're going to vote on what we want to have for dessert tonight. So you'll see, once you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a ballot with rows and columns. And there's 5 choices, and you can rank 1 or 3 or 5, however you choose to proceed, and just rank 1 choice in each column. So if you go ahead and sort, and you can reset the ballot down at the bottom if you feel like you've made not the correct choice for you. And once you complete that, you can push, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the vote button. Once you make your choices, you hit vote, and it takes you to the results page. So let's see, why am I not at the results page? I think I might have a problem because I've already voted several times. But what I want to point out, I can't see your results, but I'm guessing there is a slider there in the results that you can go back and forth between the rounds of tabulation. And at the outset, I've had a lot of people do this poll, and so there are other votes in there besides your own. And what I have typically found is that in the first round, key lime pie might be the first choice. But as you proceed through, you find that most people like chocolate. We all know that. And what happens is brownies and chocolate cake had split the chocolate vote. So once we continue through the tabulations, it ends up that brownies, or in my experience, have been the winner, because once chocolate cake is eliminated, brownie rise to the top. So in the first round, cheesecake would have been the winner, or I'm sorry, key lime pie would have been the winner. But in the ultimate outcome, brownies are the winner because more people preferred brownies. in the big picture as a second alternative. And I've done this in numerous episodes. Usually I like to do a live ballot if I'm in a live group. And it's interesting, you can have 25 people in the room and at the end say, how many people are unhappy with ice cream or whatever the final outcome is? And you might get 2 who are not that excited about having ice cream for dessert. But I said, okay, well, you know what? 10% is way better than what we have going on right now. So that's typically the kind of outcomes that we have. So I want to just take a second to ask if there's any questions, if anybody has any questions about the ballot or about the tabulation. Does anyone have a question? Let me see if I can pop my window up here.
Say that there are some questions, but I don't know if we're going to deal with these now or later.
Well, I just thought it might be easy to talk about the actual ballot itself. If it's a question about the ballot or about the tabulation.
They're general questions. So
okay. Well, let's go ahead and continue, and then we'll come back and talk about general questions. So, okay. So I guess one thing to think about is, does it make sense to you? Is it something that you could use? And do you think it would have a more inclusive or representative outcome by using a ranked choice ballot? So we'll come back to that. So how does ranked choice voting meet the LWVUS standards for electoral systems? Voters can express their true preferences, so are likely to be more engaged. The system encourages more candidates to run by allowing a field with similar views to compete without fear of splitting the vote. The tabulation is verifiable and auditable. RCV also eliminates the need for additional rounds of voting, saving the entire cost of a runoff election. And I'll show you an example. I'm sure you all remember the Georgia Senate race, that runoff that happened last December. That election, that runoff election, cost Georgia taxpayers $75 million. And it's estimated between the 2 races, the general and the runoff, that the 2 candidates spent over $300 million. We also know that typically fewer voters turn out for runoff elections, so results may be less representative. This runoff had 400,000 less voters than the general election. Possibly the most important benefit of ranked choice voting is that it turns negatives into positives. Candidates do best by staying positive and reaching out across ideological, ethnic, and racial spectrums to the broadest coalition of voters. This lessens the incentive to run a negative campaign and encourages civility. If Monica and I are running for city commission and hold many views in common, I'm not going to say anything bad about her. Instead, I'll say to her supporters, Monica and I agree on many things, so please rank me as your second choice. There's a great anecdote from a candidate debate in Minneapolis where the candidates at one point linked arms on stage and literally sang Kumbaya, refusing to insult one another out of fear of losing votes. Ranked choice voting improves representation for women, both on the ballot and in office. This chart on the left shows representation for women using using plurality voting increased by 5% over a 24-year period. On the right, cities using RCV had an 11% increase in representation for women. Currently, in city and county leadership in the US, women typically hold less than 30% of offices. Over the last decade, in 19 cities using RCV, 46% of all mayors and 49% of all city council seats are held by women. Ranked choice voting promotes diversity because it allows multiple candidates appealing to the same community to run without splitting the vote. Compared to winner-take-all elections, more people of color are running and winning in RCV cities with minority populations. The same study from the last slide shows in the chart on the left, minority representation increased 3% in cities using plurality voting. That's an improvement. However, on the right, there was an increase of 18% in cities using RCV. That is significant. Around the world, ranked choice voting has been used for years, even decades, including over 100 years in Australia. Canada's largest political parties use it in the nomination process. India uses it to elect their president. New Zealand and the UK and the United Kingdom use it in local elections. In the United States, ranked choice voting is currently used statewide in Maine, Alaska, and in more than 60 counties and cities, with more adopting it every year. It's used in local elections from liberal New York City to conservative Utah. In total, more than 13 million voters nationwide live in jurisdictions that use or plan to implement RCV. Where does the League of Women Voters stand? In 2007, the League chapter in St. Petersburg, Florida, did a study on voting process and recommended instant runoff voting. The Florida League chose not to embrace instant runoff at that time due to perceived complexity and lack of experience with that method. Since then, leagues in 12 states have done studies on ranked choice voting or instant runoff voting, and leagues in the 20 states shown here have shown support for ranked choice voting. The league in Florida and the US League have not yet taken a position. What's the status in Florida? Ranked choice voting was passed by Sarasota voters in 2007 with an overwhelming margin of 78% for use in city commission races. It was never implemented due to resistance from the Secretary of State. Several other cities also supported ranked choice voting and planned to move toward that model. We finally got the Sarasota City Commission to agree to move toward the model. And exactly 2 weeks later was when that clause was added to SB 524, prohibiting RCV for all elections in Florida and specifically calling out the existing ordinance in Sarasota. When we talk to legislators about it, they have no rationale for what their objections are. We believe, of course, as the league, that cities should be able to decide for themselves how to run their elections under home rule. Ranked choice voting has drawn support as a sensible solution to problems with our elections from political leaders that crosses party lines. As early as 2002, Senator John McCain and then State Senator Barack Obama were supporting legislation for ranked choice voting. RCV has endorsements from dozens of editorial boards, scholars, and more than 10 Nobel Prize winners. It's recommended in numerous comprehensive studies on election reform. What do RCV opponents have to say? And I'm showing some actual quotes from people or articles opposed to RCV. Some say the process is confusing. Anytime you change the way people vote, there's potential for confusion. So implementation of RCV would require nonpartisan voter education campaign. Yes, voters will need instruction on how to cast their vote, and it does require preparation to rank multiple choices. Many people would consider that a good thing. But in fact, do people who use RCV find it confusing? Multiple exit surveys show that where ranked choice voting is already in use, voters overwhelmingly complete valid ballots and large majorities rank multiple candidates. Voters across demographic levels, economic levels, and income levels show high rates of understanding and satisfaction with the RCV ballot. Up to 99.8% of the ballots are completed without error, which is comparable to the plurality method. Some people argue that RCV violates the concept of one person, one vote. That argument has been tested several times in court up to the federal level and has never prevailed. You still only get one vote. It's just possible to reallocate. And this is the same thing that we do with runoff elections, except people don't have to come back a second time to place their vote. Some infer that ranked choice voting is a partisan scheme designed to help one party or the other. Such complaints are simply wrong. Election reviews show that both major parties can be very successful at earning majority of the vote in a district or state they dominate. Ranked choice voting is simply a tool to support more majority rule and give voters the freedom to vote for the candidates they want. Sometimes it may help a Democrat, sometimes it may help a Republican, sometimes it may help a third-party candidate or independent. Who it always helps is voters. They get more choice, a stronger voice, and elect representatives that represent more people. And that's the ideal of a representative democracy. What would it mean for you as a voter if ranked choice voting is implemented? There'll be a broader slate of candidates to choose from, and you can express your true preference for the candidate that represents your view. Candidates will be more issue-focused and positive to avoid alienating voters. Winners will be less polarized and enjoy majority support. More women and people of color will run and win elections. Most importantly, your vote will always count. To create your own polls for your organization or use personally, you can go to that website, rcv123.org. It doesn't have to be political. One of our members uses a poll to determine the budget priority for her neighborhood homeowners association. In my community, we use a poll to determine the monthly movie club selection. I'm sure you can think of ways that your chapter or you could use this with the other organizations that you're a part of. One key obstacle RCV faces is, as you know, lack of awareness. Most Americans don't know there is a better way. So more league members, elected officials, and activists need to learn about ranked choice voting. Help us build awareness locally and statewide by sharing this presentation, which is in the Florida Speakers Bureau Toolkit, and recommend other organizations that may benefit from learning about RCV. For more information, please contact me at vilia@lwvsrq.org. Ranked choice voting is the fastest growing nonpartisan election reform in the nation. If you think our political system is broken, if it leaves you feeling exhausted, outraged, or just thinking there has to be a better way, consider ranked choice voting. It changes the incentives for candidates and results in better choices, better campaigns, and better representation. No single reform is a panacea that meets all of the challenges, but ranked choice voting is a great start. Here we go. Thank you. All right, let's see if we have questions. I don't see any hands up. Oh, thank you, Ronnie. That's sweet. Oh, Monica, you're muted, my dear.
I'm sorry. Forgot. So the first question is from Ronnie. How would this work in Florida with write-in candidates? Would we have to eliminate write-in candidates?
Well, you've stumped the panel. I haven't had that one before. Let me think. You know, I have seen a ranked choice ballot with a slot for write-in candidates before, now that you say that. But Ronnie, can I do some research on that and get back to you on that? Because I'm not familiar with what the, I remember seeing a ballot, but I'd have to do a little bit of research to help you with that. So I would love to get back to Monica with an answer for you, if I may.
That would be perfect to get back to Monica.
Okay, thank you.
The reason I know where this question came from is from at our voter services call last night. We were talking about the fact that write-in candidates close a primary.
Oh, yes.
Universal.
I hear. Okay, yeah. I totally get what you're saying now. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to research that and I'll find out for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then Margie has a question. I'm just going to kind of go back and forth here. Besides the League of Women Voters of the United States, who else is promoting this method of voting?
Okay, the League US has not taken a position yet, as I mentioned, and I can go back. There are 20 states or leagues within 20 states. It's not always, let me go back and find the map. It's not always the state league that has taken a position, but there are either state leagues or county leagues or whatever in 20 states that have taken a position in support. 12 states have done studies and came to the conclusion that they wanted to support it. And then the other states have joined under concurrence that also passed in 22 at the US League. If you'll recall, there's concurrence that a league chapter can agree with another league's finding in their study instead of having to do their own study. And so the rest of them have come through concurrence, but the US League does not have a position as yet. My understanding from a group that I talked to around the country is that there is a group who wants to try to bring it to the attention at the next national convention, which would be next June. I believe there is a group who's working toward proposing that it would be part of the program. So I don't know what the outcome of that, of course, will be. And then in Florida, I started this effort 2 years ago because I wanted to bring it to the Florida board. And the advice that I was given at that time was that nobody knew about it. And they said, your job is to educate all the chapters so Florida can make a decision. And so that's my mission right now, is to try to educate the chapters so we can talk about it a little bit more. And then, of course, there's the issue of SB 524, but I know that there are groups that are working to roll back that provision. It's really interesting when we, as I mentioned in my bio, I'm also with Rank My Vote Florida, and we have lobbyists who would speak to the legislators about why did you want to have this in SB 524, this provision to prevent ranked choice voting? They didn't even know what it was. None of them even knew what it was. They just, and in fact, the fellow who proposed 524 said, I just do what I'm told. So it's pretty shocking, but I think our tolerance for shock has probably risen over the last few years. But anyhow, so there are groups working to roll back that provision. And, when you talk about who's for ranked choice voting or who's against it, because you see that there are plenty of Democratic places that are for it and plenty of Republican places that are for it, and some against on each side. My interpretation is that whoever's in power, if they have overwhelming power, they don't want anything to change. And so they're against anything that might bring change. And ranked choice voting would bring a change typically, or it would moderate the discussion. And a lot of people who are in power really don't want that. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Sure.
It was a great presentation, so clear.
Thank you. Other questions? Or I see there's some stuff in the chat. Do we have any other? Oh, gerrymandering. Ronnie, it won't fix gerrymandering, but what it will do is elect more moderate candidates. And so therefore that, in my mind, would be encouraging that they would have a more moderate point of view rather than constantly pushing to consolidate power. So I think long term it could have an effect, but will it fix gerrymandering? No, it won't fix gerrymandering.
We could only wish.
Yeah. There is a petition, and if you want to go look at the Rank My Vote Florida site, there is a petition there. Rank My Vote is working with Unite America and other big national organizations to work. Although I have to tell you right now, they're all saying that they're not optimistic about Florida at this time. But the whole thing is to prepare for a year or two from now that maybe things might change a little bit. So, same thing about what's being done to overturn the ban is just educating people and try to work it and try to wait until the climate possibly improves a little bit.
So
Let's see.
Melody,
Go ahead.
Melody had a question, and I think it's there's some confusion because she's asking, why does the second choice in the first round get all the votes in the second round? And I think
Okay. Yeah, they don't get all the votes. If your first choice is eliminated, so if you'll recall that example, Althea was, if my first choice was Althea, but she only got 5% of the votes, so she was eliminated. So my vote now goes to my second choice. It's not everybody. It's only people who were eliminated get to, it's like a runoff election, basically. You know, if your choice is eliminated, you get to go back and have another run at it. So it's not all the votes that are retabulated. It's only when your first choice was eliminated. Does that help, Melody? Okay. She's muted, I guess. So
I am. Hi,
uh,
I'm sorry. I guess it is a little confusing, and that's one of my concerns, that people have a hard enough time getting to vote, and now it's going, we really have to do a lot of education here, but okay, so the 5% from the first person that didn't, I just want to understand how it works before I
sure.
can talk about it intelligently.
Okay.
So if the 5% of that first person that was eliminated, your 5% now goes to the the person with the most vote. Oh, your second choice.
Yeah,
So
the 5% of voters who voted for for Althea, let's call it, 5% of the voters picked Althea. Althea, we don't have a 50%, and we have to have 50% plus one vote to have a winner. You have to have a majority. So those 5% of the voters who voted for Althea is knocked out.
Right.
And so that 5% of the voters, those ballots are redistributed to those 5%, to the second choice of that 5% of the voters. That's all that's redistributed until now. We count again how many how many votes do we have? Do we have 51%? No. Okay. The next lowest candidate. And that's when we went.
Is this all done electronically? Excuse me.
Yeah. But you can go back and forth. There's a great video, a great YouTube about Alaska, because Alaska used it for all of their races last November. And there's a great video where the head of the Secretary of State is going through the tabulations and showing, if you'll recall, Nick Begich got out and people were complaining. Okay, I'm going to really get in the weeds here, but Mary Peltola won in the first round, right? And people were upset because she was a Democrat, and the two Republicans combined had about 0.5 percentage more. So some people were saying, well, the Republicans should have won. Well, they went back and went through the tabulations and showed that when Nick Begich, who was the third candidate, was eliminated, some of his votes went to Sarah Palin, some went to Mary Peltola, but enough went to Mary Peltola that suddenly she was over the 50%. So more people, this is how it moderates the outcome, because people, there may be an extreme candidate who really has 35% of the voters who are so avid, but no one will give that extreme candidate their second choice vote.
Right.
And so the moderate has the opportunity to succeed, because if I don't want Althea, okay, well, my vote goes to Phil. That's okay, as long as it's not George, right?
Okay. I just want to clarify for my own understanding.
I'm with you. I appreciate that.
When we push the ballot through the machine and it counts your vote, it's now registering in a rating for each particular ballot that goes through, so they know that I don't have to be me, but Susie Jones voted for A and B. Now B was
Yes.
eliminated, so all of her votes for B are now going to go to A. But the calculator is going to be able to decipher. I guess I'm having an amazement in electronics moment.
It is. It is.
Okay.
Well, it's not when you push it in the machine. You know, it's the ballots are all counted. They all go to the supervisor elections. They go through the count. And yes, just as it counts the ballots,
Okay.
it establishes who gets what percentage.
Okay.
And then they recount, and the miracle of technology, because it works. And
So we would, I know that's quite remarkable, but we would have to recuperate, re-establish or reconnect the voting machines to be able to do that.
no, well, you have the ballots. It's not to do with the voting machines. You have the ballots, and that's where the count comes from, is the ballots, right?
It's
Okay.
probably you
it-
have to have a different programming.
A different
It's
program.
all
yeah.
about the software programming.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But
Not
of course,
that techy, I'm
as
sorry.
I said,
I'll be quiet.
No. I want to answer all your questions. But as I said,
appreciate you,
when
Doc.
we're talking about meeting the standards of LWVUS, it is verifiable, meaning they can go back in to see, okay, is this really what happened? And it is auditable, so that they can go back and do the counts to be
Okay.
sure that all the counts were correct. And that's what that YouTube video about the Alaska election is very cogent about. The example that they're giving of showing how everything was counted. They were completely transparent about, here's how the counts happened. This candidate was eliminated. 20% of those votes went to this. I mean, they even say, and this many votes, these many ballots were exhausted at that point, meaning they hadn't picked another candidate. Maybe they didn't pick a third candidate. And so therefore, boom, they're out of the running. People say, well, I don't want to have to pick more than one. You don't have to pick more than one. You can vote for as many or as few as you want. But obviously, the more candidates you vote for, the more weight your ballot has. And I think that's probably one reason when Sarah Palin lost, she told everybody, don't vote for anybody but me. Don't vote for another candidate. If there are actually places where candidates who agree on stuff campaign together, and they go, okay, if you don't like me, vote, make me second to this one. And it's actually worked out. And what was hilarious, I thought, in when New York City used it last November, there were candidates who said, that's cheating. That's cheating to go and cooperate, that you're going to go ask for voters and get along, that's cheating. So I thought that was funny.
That is funny. I'm with you. Thank you so much for your explanation. I really appreciate your time.
So Candy has a question here, and am I understanding that there's no recounting if a candidate gets past 51% in the very first vote?
Unless there was a reason, unless there was something called into question, no, there would be no recounting. And as soon as somebody gets 50% for one plus one, they are the winner. So if there was some question about the legitimacy, yes, they could be recounted. But
that's essentially what they did in Alaska, to verify.
Yes.
It was essentially the equivalent of a recount, because they didn't want to believe what had happened.
Yes. Okay. And I see that Ronnie's asking about how many choices can you have. You can have as many as it depends on the structure. There is a huge movement in this national momentum called Final Five. And because in some races, I mean, you all remember examples of different primaries or whatever. There's 16, 18 candidates. And that same thing happened in New York when they were having the city elections, is there'd be 16 or 18 candidates. Well, that's impractical, And so there is a huge group that is working toward what's called Final Five, meaning there is a primary that narrows it down to the final five, and then then they use ranked choice voting to run the final 5. I think that makes it much more palatable, maybe, if you are having these races where there's so many people running. The only negative, I won't say it's a downside, but the challenge to that is if you're thinking of it in terms of how much money you save on a runoff election. So I told you about that Georgia Senate runoff that cost taxpayers $75 million. You know, if you still have to have the 2 elections to have final 5, you're still going to have that expense. And in Florida, it's significant. Here in Sarasota, I think it was $120,000 for a runoff election. I think in Jacksonville, I saw the gal from Jacksonville here, and I think it's $1.2 million for a runoff in Jacksonville. So there is this thing called Final 5, but you know, we'd love to get to that point where we had so many candidates to choose from, right? In my mind. So let's see, what else do we have? You choose first, second, third. No, you choose however many candidates there are, unless you're using Final 5, you could rank all the candidates if you choose to do that work. If you choose to do that research, you could. And I think some people get tired of that, but you know, you have to also think about if it's a candidate that no one has ever heard of, you know, if Santa Claus is right, well, no, Santa Claus we got elected. So let's think, you know, if there's a candidate that nobody has ever heard of, you have to say, okay, is it realistic to think they're going to be in the running, really? But yeah, you can vote for as many people, you know, you'll rank as many people as you choose to on the list. Okay, yes, it did work in Alaska. And I'll give you another example. I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about Alaska, since they used it in the statewide last time. And people kept saying it wasn't going to work and it was, you know, a disaster. Certain types of people were saying that. What ended up happening, remember, Mary Piltola got elected. What's her office? Is she representative? I think she's representative. Lisa is a Republican who was elected at the Senate. Oh no, Mary Piltola is governor. But it was a mix. It was people from both parties who got elected. And Mary Piltola, she was replacing the fellow who died, and she kept his staff. He was from the other party. She kept his staff in the office. I mean, it's a perfect example of people coming together versus, you know, finding the differences. So anyhow, I found that very encouraging. Okay, let's see. Anybody else? Did I miss? I might have missed some, but any other questions have I missed?
Ronnie has her hand up. I think we've got all the ones in the chat, but Ronnie's got her hand up.
I'm sorry,
Ronnie?
yeah, because you covered everything. I'm sorry I asked so many questions. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It's great.
So when you start with 10, but we want to end up with 5. How is that fair from an economic point of view? I think there's so much money involved in all of our races in every way. So I'm wondering what the thinking is regarding only rich candidates, people of money, becoming elected. That's my question.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this would give more breadth to the assortment of who can run. You know, moving from 10 to 5, that, you know, I think the final 5 is, I'm not such a huge fan of that. Maybe I don't understand it properly, but to me, I think it's great if people want to run. I think that's one of our problems right now. We have this vacuum of nobody wants to run. So I think more candidates running is good. And then the informed voter can do as much or as little research as they choose to do on how far do I want to drill down in these candidates. And to me, that's a huge opportunity for League of Women Voters. You know, if people need to be more informed about the candidates, that's right. So maybe I don't know enough about it, but for me, I know Final 5. I think one of the reasoning behind that is it's a little more palatable. to a lot of voters or to legislators who are having to pass this stuff. But yeah, that could be to be determined. I know that actually there's a phone call coming up very soon about, do we want to undertake trying, because Unite America is working with open primaries. And I know that, we've had a run-in on open primaries before, but Unite America is talking about, do we want to try to run amendment for open primaries with top 5 using RCV? And Alaska, Alaska's bill that passed was a very holistic bill. It was money reform, it was open primaries, it was ranked choice voting, it was a whole laundry list of reforms that were passed at once, which is great, but we have to see how could we get traction on that for Florida. So.
Okay, is there any more questions? Okay, I don't see any in the chat, and I don't see any hands up.
Okay, I will send some follow-up information, and Ronnie, I'm going to find out about the write-in candidates. Thanks for that good question.
Yeah, and that's for Monica. You'll do that with Monica.
Yes, I will. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, silent and otherwise.
Thank you.
That was very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you everyone for attending. I will send out, I'll get this on our YouTube channel, and then I will send it out so you can review it again. And then I'll also include some of those links that were in the chat and that Vilia gave us. So we'll do that. But thank you very much. We really appreciated it. Bye-bye, everyone. Good night.